Today I'll be talking to Rachel Pollock from Bricoluse. And Rachel is a theatrical milliner, a professor, an author, and I'm sure you'll find this interview really fascinating.
I took my first millinery class in college. There was a millinery class attached to the theater department, the dramatic art department, and I hated it. What I was good at was, and this is great for theatrical millinery, was looking at a research image and copying the scale of it. So when you put it on a human being's head, it looked right according to this, historical fashion plate. And I was very
Yeah.
good at that. But the person who taught it taught all of the skills by hand of like the absolute handcrafted. You must sew all of the buckram on by hand. You must upholster this hat, so delicately. And I didn't have the patience for that.
So
So,
in fact, they were teaching the same theories and methods that were done like 50, 100 years ago. And we
yes,
forward,
and I understand the philosophy behind, like, if you know how to do it in the old school original way, then you can figure out how to cut corners and where you can speed up the process by sewing something by machine or whatever. I think I was just too young to really process that aspect of learning it in the old school way. So I didn't do millinery. I took that class and was like, well, I definitely don't want to do that. But I also was very much an ostentatious hat wearer. This was the 90s, and I was very into club culture and the goth scene. And I had all of these elaborate vintage hats that I would wear just in my life. And really not until I started my career as a theater costumer did I realize that I actually wanted to specialize in millinery and costume craft work, and that I didn't have to do it the slow, painstaking way that I had been taught, that I could come up with faster ways that didn't compromise quality. And so I guess it was like 1998 was the year in which I first assisted a theatrical milliner that I thought I saw her making hats for a show and was like, that I could be good at. Yeah, well, and I assisted her and I learned a lot of tips and tricks from her. Denise Wallace Spriggs, she's, pretty well known online as a milliner now. She does a stream on Fridays on Facebook Live, Fun Friday Millinery, that a lot of contemporary milliners and such do.
Right. So you've worked across theatre now, and I'd like to know what you've worked on, who you've worked with, because you've had quite a varied career.
It's true.
Yeah, I want to know more about it.
I could, my CV at this point is like 30 pages long because, every time you work on a new show, you might work on 10 different shows in a year, and there are 6 of them at the same theater, and then, encapsulate it is difficult. I think,
a period that, I've watched you doing your drawn bonnets and things like that, and I think, oh, is that the period she's really into? But then I've seen you make 40s styles, and so is there a period that encapsulates what you like to do, or are you happy to sort of go across the board?
I'm happy to do whatever's required for any given theatrical production. Whatever hats are needed to be made, I'll make them. And if I don't know how to make them, I'll figure it out. I'll do the research. I'll do some samples and learn the skills. I do find myself very drawn to the styles of the 40s, and I have been doing a lot of experimentation with the stitched and with the flat patterned sewn hat styles of that period.
I think a lot of us are drawn to that sort of vintage 40s, 50s era because they went from nothing. The war eras had nothing, and they were having to make something out of nothing or just wear what they had. And then they just went a bit bolder and a bit more sharper and a bit more, this is me. And
I think it comes out of an adversity and a need to innovate, and make do and upcycle, and we as a culture right now are really attracted to those kinds of things too. And then there's that post-war celebration of explosion of sophistication and opulence that came out of having survived that. That I do think I'm really drawn to a lot of the social factors that were happening in the world at the time that influenced the fashions, that I can't discount that, Now, I really have gotten into exploring Regency bonnet styles in this pandemic shutdown. I guess I originally started it because I knew I was going to do a guest presentation on Regency bonnets. And when I booked it back before COVID, I thought I could use bonnets from the collection of the theater that I work at. And I realized I'm not going to be able to get back in there to borrow those bonnets. So I better make one. Is in the theater, when there's a show that's set in that time period, you can't make the bonnet brims as deep as they would have been because you can't light the face down inside of there, excuse to explore that style, a bonnet from that era. And then I really just got taken by all the other ways and materials and techniques you could use that come out of that time period. It's not my favorite time period for fashion, and it's not my favorite time period for what's going on in the world, but the hat structures are amazing. I think them, you can't see their face, or they have a shadow on their face that, if they walk on with them, they take them off immediately. So, and actually what you do is make them shorter and set them further back on the head than they actually would have been worn. So it's a style that I'm familiar with the shapes of it from fashion plates, but I've never had the opportunity to really make one that's actually what it would have been, or the ability of the lighting crew to get light on their face, or the sound crew to make it so you can get a microphone in there. It's a freedom that I don't normally have. There's such ostentatious, large structures that I've just loved. The class is structured is not by time period, or I don't assign them projects. Like, I don't give them an image and say, make this hat. Each project is focused on a technique or a material, like buckram and wire, blocked felt, thing that frames what it is. So one person might want to block a traditional fedora, and one person might want to hand block a crazy 20s cloche, and and both of those people will do that. And then we all get together once the hats are made and talk about how the process went and what we learned. How was your freeform felt blocking different from the person who had a block and then expressed themselves with trim after the fact? Difference between theatrical millinery and model millinery for contemporary fashion market, because the skill set is the same. Like, you need to be able to manipulate the same types of material. The freedom that you have in contemporary millinery design, like, I don't design anything, in the theater. Like, that's someone else's job. The theater that I work for, they aren't going to announce their 21-22 season until next month, July. But they've talked to us about what they are hoping to announce. And, the idea is that there will be a season of plays, and that we'll be producing them with costumes and sets and all of that. So, it's kind of a wait and see, but this is what it'll probably be. And then, of course, I'm teaching my class each semester next year at the university. But I also have a couple of sources of passive income. Like, I have textile designs on spoonflower.com that I get royalties from anytime someone buys fabric with that print on it. And that did great. Like, during the worst of the mask sewing stuff,
Yeah.
fabric at that time, that it really, I don't know what I would have done without that income just suddenly going now. But it's still higher than it was before the pandemic. And then I have royalties from the things that I've written, which is like maybe a grocery run worth. It's like, it's not paying the mortgage, it's not even paying the electric bill, but I started that blog 15 years ago, and at the time there wasn't a lot of resources online, and blogging was a thing. Like, it was a social medium. It was everybody read their blog list before, over their coffee in the morning. And it was a great way to communicate the things that I wanted to record. And I guess it finally occurred to me that, like, if I wanted to reach a new audience of people who were interested in learning the things that I wanted to communicate, that video was the medium by which to do it. And I think the first thing that happened that made me think about launching my channel was at the beginning of the mask sewing back in April or whenever. Instructions all over the internet from different people, and PDFs of things you could just print out and then cut and sew. And a friend of mine said, I've tried to follow these patterns and I just need someone to show me. Like, if I could come to your house and we could make it together, I would, something would click, but that's not possible because it's not safe. And I said, well, let me film a video for you of how I do it. And I filmed a under 1 minute video of making a mask. I get it. I can do this now. And she started making them. And then that got picked up by the campus paper at the university where I teach. And suddenly I got a lot of feedback about how wonderful that was and how many people had tried to read the patterns and didn't succeed. And I was creating videos for my class, and I was like, maybe I should share those videos somewhere to digitize what they're teaching. Some people are really stressing out about it. If it can help, then sure. I don't want to just help my own 6 students. If I can also help your 6 students or the world's,
I just want to thank Rachel. It was a fabulous interview. We had a lot of fun chatting, and I'm sure, like me, you'll have discovered a lot of interesting facts. So stick to the end, and I'll put up all the links to her YouTube and her blog, etc. And also you can find them in the description below. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I look forward to speaking to you soon.